So, if you follow comic book, manga, anime, Marvel, DC news, whatever, any kinds of combinations of those things, you've most likely heard about a website called CBR. CBR stands for Comic Book Resource, and they are basically a one-stop shop for anything you might want to know about, like mainstream geeky stuff, like what I just mentioned, like new Marvel shows or movies coming out, or new manga anime episodes or chapters, or whatever thing in between. And for the most part, they're a pretty harmless website. They're not posting anything all that interesting, and it's usually just shit I gloss over because I don't really care about it that much. But there's the occasional thing that they put out on there that is just either frustrating because it just spoils entire plot points from TV shows or movies that just came out in the headline, or they just have really bad takes about shit. And that's what I want to talk about today. I found an article by CBR titled 10 Ways Mikasa Ruined Her Likability, referring to Mikasa from Attack on Titan. And this article goes on about how Mikasa has no likable traits, she has no personality to herself whatsoever, and they double down on that numerous times despite contradicting themselves and making arguments that don't really have any merit whatsoever. So I want to jump into this and kind of go over their arguments and why I think they range from misguided to completely insane and idiotic. So let's start out with number 10, talking about the scene in the beginning of season 1 where they're in the mess hall. Fight breaks out between John and Eren, and Keith Shadis, their commanding officer, comes in and tells them to knock it off. He yells at them, and somebody needs to be punished for it. So Mikasa throws Sasha under the bus a little bit and blames her for all of the commotion, when it was actually John and Eren's fight that was the real source of it. So sure, I'll be the first to admit that's kind of a shitty thing to do to somebody. That makes her a little bit of a bad friend to Sasha, sure, but I mean, it's not as if her and Mikasa had any sort of long-lasting friendship to begin with. She was covering for somebody she actually does care about, and she couldn't have known how Shadis would punish her anyway. I mean, it's not fair to assume that she didn't think that she would get punished, but she had no idea that he would take it that seriously. She was mostly joking around, as they were already doing in the room anyway. So it's clear to me right away in this article, in this first section of this article, that they have a clear bias towards Sasha, and you'll see a trend in this article where they clearly just don't like it when a character is mean to one of the characters they do like Sasha and Levi, who comes up later, because a couple points throughout of it, they mention how Mikasa did things to characters that they like, and that makes her bad, even though it was a completely reasonable thing, or it just completely contradicts something they mentioned earlier. It's really annoying how often they do that, actually. It's like, did they even watch the show? Did they proofread this, even remotely? This is what leads me into number 9, which kind of immediately threw me off. After I read it didn't bother me that much until I read the rest of the article, and then I came back to this one after and realized how stupid it was. So they say, Mikasa's cold demeanor makes her appear more like Eren Yeager's puppet than a standalone character. So already, there's a typo in the headline, in the header for this section. I mean, it's it's kind of obvious. It's right there. Eren Yeager's puppet shows they didn't proofread this very much at all when they read this. But anyway, the argument they put in is that the intensity of commitment Mikasa makes to Eren is as admirable as it is unlikable. They basically talk about how she has no personality of her own, and her whole life revolves around helping out Eren and serving him and doing everything he does. I mean, I suppose that's fair. It's a really common, really annoyingly popular argument, but I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, I guess that is kind of the whole point, right? It even comes up at some point in the show, which I'll get to later. But they're saying that she never makes any important decisions until the final arc of the show, which, if you've watched the whole show, you'll know that just isn't true. They even mention it. This is what got to me. Later on in the article, in a different header, they mention a decision she makes before the final arc of the show in season 3 that directly contradicts this argument. I'll get to that what that decision was later, because you'll see it is critically important and doesn't even really involve Eren that much. He's definitely part of it, but the decision itself does not affect him directly. So it's really annoying that they make this argument and then contradict themselves later directly, and then don't even stop to think that maybe they should go back and edit their first argument because this clearly disproves it. So it's fine. I mean, if you want to say she doesn't have any personality outside of Eren, but it's not okay to claim that she never thinks for herself, especially when you go later to literally mention a part where she does exactly that. Number 8 goes on to talk about the genocide in Marley at the beginning of Season 4, the one that Eren participated in, the one that he kind of orchestrated when he broke in and turned into a Titan and killed literally millions of people. And they almost seem to blame Mikasa for it, which is beyond me. They say, one of the ways Mikasa bent to the will of Eren Yeager was assisting in his invasion of Marley. And then they even mention, they admit, that the entire scout regiment assisted Eren in this assault. It wasn't just Mikasa. That doesn't absolve each individual character of responsibility for the number of Eldian and Marleyan lives lost during the surprise attack. That's true. I mean, everybody should be held accountable for their own actions. But that includes everybody. You're really gonna single out this one character whose role in this attack wasn't much bigger than anyone else's anyway. She was just one other soldier that was there with dozens of others. In fact, her role was less important than people like Sasha, for instance, who was literally a fucking tower sniper. Like, she shot a bunch of people. They're not gonna talk about her? No, because that's their favorite character. They're not gonna mention her. It's idiotic. But not as idiotic as number 7, which is probably one of the, not the worst, we'll get to that, but one of the stupidest things I've read in this article. So it mentions the scene in the first half of Season 4 where Eren confronts Mikasa and Armin and basically tells Mikasa that she is nothing but a slave to her instincts and she has no volition, she has no free will and can't make decisions of her own volition. That part's true. He does say that to her, and she does believe him. The argument that they make, and the issue they have with Mikasa in this context, is that Armin tries to stand up for her and fight Eren after he basically insults her to her face, and Mikasa stops him from doing this. She basically blocks him and prevents him from attacking Eren. And their argument is that this only justified Eren's point of view, and anybody who justifies Eren is losing likability points. Do you see the problem here? She is not justifying Eren's plan by proving him right about being a slave to her own instincts. This is two completely separate things. These are two completely separate issues. Not to mention the fact that she knew that if Armin attacked Eren, who was already bleeding out on the table and had injured himself with the intention of turning into a Titan in case anything went wrong, would have transformed and killed everybody on the spot if a fight broke out between them. She was trying to protect her friend. First and foremost, because she knew that if Armin attacked him, he would probably get his ass kicked, or would transform into the Colossal Titan and make things worse. Mikasa stops Armin from attacking Eren, and their argument that proves Eren's plan right, and that she is siding with him because she's doing it on purpose. Like, do you not realize, not only is Eren manipulating her, and the things he's telling her aren't true anyway, but if you are to believe the things Eren says, it literally shows you that Mikasa is acting against her own will and can't actually control her instincts. She's not doing this because she agrees with Eren, even remotely. She actively disagrees with him and is trying to tell him that in this scene, which is when this then occurs. So to imply that she's doing it out of purpose in order to prove him right is so fucking stupid. That's not what happened in this scene at all. And it just goes to show, at least in my opinion, the author of this seems like they didn't even watch the show before writing this. They read a Sparks Notes version of it on Google, and then wrote this article. So I said already that number 7 was one of the worst arguments they make in this whole show, because it feels like they didn't even watch it. But number 6, I think, is the worst thing in the whole article. I think this is worse than 7. They genuinely make the argument, like actually, that John's love was overlooked by Mikasa because she constantly followed after Eren Yeager. So what they're saying is that she's unlikable because she ignored Jean's romantic advances in favor of Eren, despite Jean being a much better candidate for her. Are you kidding me? Like, they're saying Jean is entitled to Mikasa's affection simply because he was nice to her. Like, that is so fucked. And, like, that's like the worst thing I've ever read about this show at all, I think. They're saying they're okay with Mikasa building her entire personality around her love interest as long as it isn't Eren. And they're saying that if she pursued Jean instead of him, that she wouldn't have had to put her life on the line. Okay, then think about all the things that wouldn't have happened as a result of that. Mikasa would never have joined the scout regiment. She never would have defeated Annie, most likely. They never would have gotten even remotely as far as they did, even at the end of Season 1, to weaponizing Eren's Titan powers. If she had joined the military police, like Jean was originally planning, which he most likely would have if she had actually pursued him, which doesn't make any sense anyway because they had zero relationship and zero chemistry. The whole running joke of the show was that Mikasa does not return his feelings. And she's not entitled to simply because she's nice to him. Like, I could go on about this forever, dude. It is such a stupid thing to say. I don't get it. Now, number 5 is pretty brief, but it's also really dumb. They basically just criticize Mikasa for accusing Ymir of being a participant in the plan to kidnap Eren when Reiner and Bertholdt take him away. So their argument is that Ymir was innocent. She didn't deserve to be targeted and accused so much, but did Ymir really do much to prove that she was on anyone's side to begin with? I mean, she was already a notoriously untrustworthy person. She hadn't proven to be particularly reliable in battle, and she knowingly lied to people. I mean, she concealed her Titan power from everybody. She had no loyalty to anybody except Historia. Even as a viewer of the show, Ymir was immediately suspect to me. I was like, yeah, she may very well have been in charge. She may very well have been involved in this operation. She doesn't do much to prove otherwise anyway. Number 4 goes into what I was saying earlier, though, where they literally go on to say that they don't like Mikasa because she's mean to a character they do like. In this context, this goes into the decision that I mentioned earlier that Mikasa makes at the end of Season 3, where she very clearly makes a decision, an emotionally charged decision of her own volition that has little to do with Eren even remotely. Well, by extension it does, and I'm referring to the part where, at the end of the Battle of Shiganshina, when Armin and Eren are basically dead. I mean, they're like, not really dead, but they're on the verge of death, and after fighting the Colossal Titan, and Levi is trying to decide which one of them to give the Titan Serum to so that they can then consume Bertholdt's Colossal Titan and survive. And Eren and Mikasa are both begging him to save Armin because that's their childhood friend. So Mikasa turns her blade on Levi and threatens to kill him if he doesn't, inject Armin with the serum. So the issue behind this is that they mentioned earlier in the article that she never actually makes a decision for herself. And yet here they are, describing a decision she made that would have cost her potentially her life and her entire career with the Scout Regiment and could have landed her in prison. In fact, it does later on. Her and Eren both get held up because of this. So it's really dumb that they just blatantly contradict themselves like that. This is a very important decision that she made entirely of her own volition because of how much she cares for Armin. So it also goes to show that Eren is not the only person she has affection for. She might not like Armin romantically like she does with Eren, but that doesn't change the fact that she cares about him immensely, which is shown in this scene. They cap off this section of the article by saying threatening to kill Levi isn't a great way to win over the hearts of Attack on Titan fans. So they are just angry that Mikasa threatened and turned her back on a fan favorite character that they happen to like, even if that decision in that moment wasn't even out of character for her and was actually a huge moment of development for her personality-wise. They overlook that fact simply because Levi is cool and they like him. So number 3 is honestly not that bad. I mean, it's kind of boring. It's the closest thing they get to a valid argument. Mikasa acts pretty dumb after she thought Eren died at the end of the Trost District fight. and he ends up coming back as a Titan, saving her life. And I mean, like, all right, I get what they mean. Mikasa was a little bit distraught. She didn't exactly think clearly. So it makes sense that they can, I can see where they're coming from with this argument, but they mention that she basically throws out all of her sense of self-preservation, and that her own obsession with Eren was detrimental to her own well-being, and that she failed to realize she was running out of fuel in her ODM gear and nearly got herself killed. Now, I'd argue she was already in mortal peril before this occurred. They were already out of gas. Everybody had no resources left. I mean, this was a very desperate situation. Everybody thought they were going to die. In fact, Mikasa may have already resigned herself to that. Most of the scouts there had, with the few notable exceptions. So it's not really fair to think that she went on a rampage and disregarded her own well-being after she found out Eren died. I think she had already kind of done that. When she's cornered by two Titans, it is actually none other than Eren himself in her mind who motivates her to not give up and to continue fighting. So she actually finds more resolve and decides to fight at the end before she's saved by Eren in Titan form. She didn't get herself in danger. She was already in an active war zone with almost no gas, Titans running around everywhere, already experiencing something horrifically traumatic. I mean, this wasn't as cut and dry as her just going insane because her friend died. I mean, that's just stupid. Number 2 is where, again, another thing that happens that wasn't even her fault, even remotely. And they talk about she ignored Levi's commands and attacked the female Titan without a plan. Not only is this part really badly worded because they repeat themselves immediately. They say Mikasa has a habit of ignoring her senior officers in favor of chasing after Eren. Then they say Mikasa has a habit of ignoring her own instincts in favor of chasing after Eren. It's the same sentence, just with slightly different words twice. But their argument is also really stupid. They say that Mikasa abandons her unit and her plan in order to go after Annie, and she only does that because Eren got kidnapped. And sure, I mean, she does act out of emotion and kind of abandons her plan, but they already didn't really have a plan at this point, because if you watch the same episode, right before this happens, Eren was ordered by Levi to transform into a Titan, only in the event that all other options are exhausted. He was only meant to transform if everybody else had been defeated, or if their plan went awry, which was to capture Annie using the Scout Regiment. They do this, she gets away, Eren then takes it upon himself to transform and fight her. Eren is then also defeated, and then captured. So they were in a desperate situation yet again. They had no other plan. Eren was the plan, and this was taken away from them. And then he was captured by Annie, who was about to take her back home to God knows where at this point. So obviously things were desperate. The only plans they had been thrown out the window. The last part they mention is the one that yet again just gets shit completely wrong about the story. They say that Mikasa refused to serve as a political figure for the Azumabito people, which is the race that, she's supposed to be like the last line of royalty for this race, which is basically this world's equivalent of Japanese people. And they say that instead of embracing her cultural identity and fighting to aid the Azumabito people when she's asked to, she props Eren up until his ego and trauma pushed him toward genocide. So Mikasa went her entire life thinking she was the last person alive in her family lineage, that she was the only Azumabito person left alive. She immediately finds out that isn't the case, and she doesn't know this until Eren's genocide plan is already in motion, by the way. So how could she possibly have known not to prop up Eren as a figurehead for this plan when she had no idea this plan was even going to happen and that these people even existed? All of the things she does with Eren happened before she even knew her people were still alive. Not to mention the fact that she's not even the one that persuaded Eren into this plan. Have you not heard of Zeke Yeager, Eren's half-brother, the Beast Titan, the guy who came up with the euthanization plan to begin with? He was the one who literally orchestrated this entire thing and approached Eren and told him to go through with this. That was not Mikasa that did that. She was not the one who inflated his ego and told him to go through with this genocide plan and encouraged him for it. That was Zeke. If you watch the show, you know who Zeke is. That is Aaron's brother, his half-brother. He was the one who told him and persuaded him into this and inflated his ego to the point of genocide. That was not Mikasa who did that. Sure, she didn't actively discourage it all the time, but she was not the one who propped him up as the figurehead for the euthanization plan. She was vehemently against that plan, up until the very point where he then genocided Marley, and then she realized they had no choice but to go through with it at that point. And who Levi defeated and captured on 2 separate occasions and chose not to kill him. Levi is the one, if anyone, you want to blame, because he could have killed Zeke multiple times and chose not to because he wanted information out of him. So, I mean, you're latching on to this character simply because you have a personal vendetta against her, but the arguments you're making aren't even valid. That's really all I have to say. This article just gets so much wrong about the plot in this show in general. You can not like Mikasa. That's fine. I'm not expecting you to say that she's a flawless character by any means. I certainly don't think that. But you at least give me a reason outside of just being angry that she does things that undermine your favorite characters. I'm not saying she's likable. I mean, I don't even necessarily disagree with their arguments, with that main argument, but the reasons they give are just very stupid and just completely out of context. So if you disagree with me, or you want something else to say, or you think I misguided or I misread some of this article, feel free to let me know. I can link it in the description. Otherwise, I do stream on Twitch from Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, as well as some other random days on the weekend sometimes if I feel like it. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Resident Evil Village, as well as a little bit of Breath of the Wild. So if you'd like to come hang out, watch me play some games there, I'd appreciate that. Give me a follow. And then subscribe here. We'll see more content of this in the future. Right now, I'm kind of in experimental phase. I'm throwing stuff around, seeing what sticks. So, if this is the kind of video you'd like to see more of, I would love to hear it. If you'd like, and I'd love some feedback in general. I'm trying some things out right now with my channel. It's going through a bit of a rebrand, so be patient with me. But please be civilized. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you.